because I had no idea that I was doing the developmental, the line editing, the copy editing, and a proofread for $200 on a, let's say, a 50K word manuscript.
Ooh,
I was
no.
lowballing myself. Like,
Hello and welcome to the Mic'd Up Podcast. My name is Kaya. I am an author, a podcaster, and an entrepreneur. And today on my podcast, I have Khloe Cain, who is a professional editor. And I'm so excited that she's here today because I want to get into editing, why it's important, self-editing, all of that. How are you doing this morning?
doing very, very, very good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. We're going to get started. We're going to go right into your bio and we're going to go right into your Q&A.
Let's go.
All right. So Khloe Cain is a reader turned editor with a passion for editing. After years of noticing mistakes while reading for fun, she took the leap into professional editing. She ended up loving the process and the rest is history. She helps writers deliver a polished book and has worked with some of your favorite authors, aspiring authors, and publishing companies. Focused on high quality editing, Khloe's services include polishing manuscripts and improving writing skills in fiction, nonfiction, memoirs, business books, short stories, blogs, and more. Nice. Now, I don't know if you're allowed to tell me, but who are some of the authors, well-known authors that you have edited for? Are you able to tell us that, or is it?
And I've worked with, I don't know if you're familiar with Wahida Clark, but I've worked with her publishing company. I've worked with Ashley Antoinette, Jaquavis Coleman. So I've worked with some of the best writers out there, like some of your favorite authors I've worked with.
Okay. All right. So that leads me into my first question. Can you tell us about your background and what you did in your career before editing?
Sure. So it's so funny because before I started my editing journey, I was in the banking industry. So, that's like night and day. But being an avid reader, I saw many errors, especially in urban fiction books. And I'm the kind of person that will put a book down. If the errors are just too much for me, I'll just put the book down. So there was a small publishing company that took a chance on me and invited me to do a sample edit for one of their clients. And I guess I nailed it because their feedback was that I worked on the project as though I've been doing it forever. I'm like, no, I'm just pretty good with English and grammar, always been. I had the type of parents that corrected if I said I ain't got no. My dad was like, what are you saying? Like, did I want you to talk like that? So I've just always had a thing for reading for one and just English and grammar in general.
Okay. It's funny you said you were in banking. I was in banking for 10 plus years as well. Isn't that funny?
I was almost at that 10-year mark and I'm like, and I was so unhappy. I'm like, I have to figure this out. Like I was the head teller, so I was managing other tellers. It was just much and not enough pay. I'm like, this.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. You don't get into banking to get rich. You certainly don't. So do you have any educational training in editing, or like you said, you just always had a good command of the English language and you just leaned on that?
So technically I'm self-taught. And that's because, like I said, I've always had a strong background, like in school years, even into college. I excelled anything English, anything grammar. I was that person. I wasn't the student that had all those crazy red markups. Like I was just always good at it. And so what I ended up doing to perfect my own craft was I started looking at YouTube videos, reading different blogs, and reaching out to other editors as well, practicing my craft. So I'm like literally self-taught.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So when did you decide to to start your own business? It's called Chloe's Thoughts Editing?
And
Chloe's Thoughts Editing.
mhm,
Okay.
mhm.
When did you?
So I started, let me see. I believe I started Chloe's Thoughts or KTE back in 2013.
Okay.
And that came after I started doing the freelancing editing for the small publishing company. And I'm like, wait a minute, like I
Right.
possibly have something here. And so
Right.
I just started branching out, reaching out to other authors, other publishing companies, doing free edits for them. And
Oh,
that's pretty much
building up
how I
your
started. Like people
portfolio.
think you can just hop into editing and charge people. It's like, nope, there are steps that you have to take. A lot of steps, actually.
So you worked essentially for free to build your portfolio and to build relationships as well. How long did you have to do that before you're like, okay, I'm ready to start charging people? And when you started charging people, did you charge your fairly, or were you afraid to?
Listen, I remember
Um,
when I started out, I was charging like $200 for edits. And that was before I educated myself because I was overworking myself because I had no idea that I was doing the developmental, the line editing, the copy editing, and a proofread for $200 on a, let's say, a 50K word manuscript.
ooh,
I
no.
was lowballing myself. Like,
Yeah.
I was lowballing myself, and I took a hiatus in 2015 because I had lost my grandmother, and I was very close to her, and very depressed. So I fell out of love with a lot of different things. And so when I came back with the rebrand, I'm like, I have a lot of experience under my belt. We're not doing $200 edits no more. Like that
Right.
was no. I'm like, nah.
So how did you realize that you were not charging enough? Was it from other editors, or you're just like, this is too much work for all these words?
Yeah, I feel like it was too much. Once I got into my own groove and my clientele increased, and I'm just like, I'm doing a lot of work here. I'm doing a lot of work. And then the expectations that were set for me by my clients, it was just like, so for instance, they're wanting a developmental, but then they're asking for a copy edit. And those are two different things. So I'm doing 3 in 1. And I'm like,
Right.
I felt overworked and overwhelmed. And then I started reaching out to other editors and, just talking to people in the industry. And that's when I'm like, okay, we got to bump these rates up some because you're
Right.
just working the bare minimum, like for the bare minimum.
Right. Now,
Hmm.
did you have, um, when you did up your prices, did you feel as if people weren't willing to pay them? Like were you afraid that, oh, they're gonna think this is too much? And did you have that fear being relatively new?
Yes, I was petrified when I increased my rates. But what I did to kind of offset that is I started offering different packages, and
Okay.
then I also break my payments up into 3 payments.
Okay.
So let's say you get the full edit for 2,000. I break that up, which is manageable for the author, especially like some people I'm out of their budget, but they want to work with me. So I work with them, and sometimes we
Right.
may have to 4 payments instead of 3 payments.
Gotcha. Okay.
Mhm.
Um, so when you first launched, you said you started around 2013, and maybe around 2015 is when you're taking on paying clients. What was your expectation when you really started getting into, making this a career? I guess I'm asking, what did you see happening with your business when you said, okay, I'm going to go all in with this?
So I went into it not expecting anything because I'm the kind of person when I set expectations and it doesn't go the way that I expect it to go, it's very disheartening for me. So I just went into it with these are my rates. I will attract the clientele that I'm supposed to have. And if they're willing to pay, then they're willing to pay. If they're unable to pay, we can work on it. And if they're just like, oh no, girl, you just too high, that's not the client for me.
Gotcha.
That's not the client for me.
All right. Let's see. I'm trying to figure out how to ask this question. No. It's not bad. We're going to get into why it's important to have your manuscript edited.
Mm-hmm.
But because what you do is like it's a faceless process. People
Mm-hmm.
just read the book. They don't know who, the process it went through to get to them, the editing, the rewrites, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you sometimes want to be like, I don't want to say in the spotlight, but how do you feel about, I'm trying to figure out a good way to ask. Do you want to be in the forefront of a book to say, okay, yeah, I edited that. That was me. You know what I mean? Do you?
Very humble. And I'm very low key. I am like an introvert. So I prefer to play the background a lot of the times. Like I don't expect an author to give me a shout out and their acknowledgments or anything like that. I mean, when they do it, it's wonderful. It's beautiful, especially when it's a beautiful finished product. It's like, okay, my name's on it. But I like to be in the background, and that's something that I've struggled with because it's time for me to come to pop out. It's time for me to pop out and show. And what I've been working on all year is popping out and just being, I have to be the face of my company. I can't remain faceless. I have to put myself out there.
Okay. Makes sense. All right. So let's get to the meat of all of this because I still call myself a relatively new author. And when I wrote my first manuscript, all I know is that I wrote it. I didn't know what needed to happen with it. I'm like, well, I needed to be proofread. I didn't know formatting. I didn't know editing. I didn't know anything. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us why it's important for authors, both new authors and tenured authors, why it's important for us to get our manuscripts professionally edited?
So for me, I believe that writing is hard. Like I've tried to write a nonfiction book years ago and it's still in my Google Docs to this day. But writing is hard and you work really hard to perfect your craft. So why waste all of that hard work on a poorly or a book that was not edited? Because there are things that I may see that you did not notice. There may be some repetition, or this person is Black in this scene and then in the next scene they're white. You could have like overlooked that. So it's important to get a second set of eyes, because then you publish something with all of these errors and you get these poor reviews and you're upset about it. And it's like, well, did you go to a professional editor to work out the kinks in your story? So it's like, don't waste your talent on a poorly edited book or a non-edited book.
Okay. Is there ever a situation where you would recommend self-editing?
So I don't recommend that, because for me, it's your baby. And like I said before, you may not see things that I see in your book. And you're so attached to it, you don't want to make those changes, but it's like, it's not helping the storyline. So let's get rid of it. So there are things that I can spot that you probably can't, because you're so attached to it and you don't let it go.
That makes sense. So my next question goes into the importance of editing. Are you able to explain to us the different types of editing an author may need? Let's say they have a manuscript that is fiction, let's say urban fiction. What type of editing would you suggest, or how do you determine what type of editing they need?
So with that, especially for first-time authors, I always advise a full edit, which is a developmental, a line, and a copy edit with the proofread. Because the developmental looks at the story from the big picture. So I'm looking at your storyline, your plot, your character development, your pacing, your voice, even the dialogue. Like, excuse me, does what this character is saying matches up with their personality? Like, we're looking at things like that to make sure that everything is flowing correctly.
Right.
The line editing, I look at everything from like a sentence by sentence, line by line, paragraph by paragraph, to make sure that those sentences are clear and concise and you're relaying the message that you want to relay to the audience. Sometimes authors do like these crazy, overly complex sentences. It's like, this doesn't really, you're trying to sound too intellectual and it doesn't flow with the genre that you're writing.
Right.
So line editing will look at that as well. And then for the copy edit, it looks at the mechanical part. So it's like pretty much the error. So is it missing a comma? Is this word spelled out correctly? Things like that. And then the proofreading just polishes the entire manuscript. It catches everything that was probably not caught in those first few rounds.
Okay. Do you work alone?
So I don't. I do have people that I hire proofreading, especially. When it comes to the developmental, the line, and the copy edit, I like to do that myself and then pass it on to someone on staff because I look at it so many times.
Right.
I am so it's likely that I did miss something or a misspelled word. And so the proofreader will get all of those kinks out for me.
Right. I was just going to say, I was told early on that the person who edits shouldn't proofread the document. So that makes sense. Okay. So what are the most common mistakes you see in manuscripts with authors?
So with that, over or underwriting. So there could be a scene that's a pointless, it's not a pointless scene, but it's something that they don't have to go into like in depth about. So I see the over under explaining a lot. The overuse of adverbs and adjectives. They may use 10 adjectives to describe something. It's like, no, maybe you should pick 1 or 2 adjectives to describe this and leave it at that. Pacing. Sometimes, when it's that conflict and tension, the pacing, you don't want it to be too fast and you don't want it to be too slow. You want to kind of build that out. So I see a lot of pacing issues. And the overly complex sentences. It's like, you could simplify this in 1 sentence instead of a sentence with a comma, a semicolon. We can 1 sentence this.
Right. Yeah, I often fight with commas, semicolons, and whatever that dash thing is for.
The M dash. It tears authors up. Like I had one author where I told her in her review, you are M dash crazy and it's not necessary. We're gonna fix this.
Yes, I'm definitely with that M dash and dialogue tags. I am addicted to dialogue tags. I can't help it. I try and I don't have to say he said, she said. It's 2 people there. We know who they are. So it's like I struggle with that as well. So I know for sure that I am the type of person who needs an editor to go behind me and make sure, like you said, things are polished and you're putting your best foot forward.
And that's where the developmental comes in at, because the editor can point that out. Like if you develop the character like to the T, to their highest potential, and there's dialogue between 2 characters, there comes a point where you can sparingly use the dialogue tags because the reader will know, oh, this is John or this is that. Like they'll know who's speaking based off of what it is they're saying because of their personality.
Now, this is an odd question, but For me, I started paying attention a lot to dialogue tags when I was getting stuff on audio because it translates differently. Is that something you discuss with the author? Is that something like you would edit differently if you know it's going to audio? Does that make sense?
No, I edit the same. Now if I do feel like it's lacking the dialogue tags, because sometimes you want the dialogue tag and the action beat. You know, the action beat could be they said and they're moving their hands and you're describing their movements. So I kind of keep it the same, but if I notice that they're using it too much, I'm like, look, we about to he said, she said us to death. Let's remove that.
Gotcha.
The word for said, or just remove it all together.
Gotcha. What do you feel are the biggest misconceptions about what you do in editing?
I would have to say the biggest misconception is that the editor will change your voice. And for me personally, I pride myself on not changing the author's voice. And I do, like, I can tell. So I believe in the author-editor relationship, us being like this. Like, that's very important to me because that's how I can tell your voice in your writing. That's how I know, okay, they write this way for a reason and not to change it. If there's ever a time that I'm unsure of their voice or tone, I don't just make the changes. I use track changes and I make a comment asking them, is this your intended tone? But that's one of the biggest misconceptions. And it's like, no, they're not supposed to remove your voice, but they're supposed to strengthen your voice. That's my focus, is to strengthen your voice.
I agree with that. If someone is looking for an editor and they have that concern of they think someone's going to take over their project and, make it sound like it's not them, what questions should authors be asking potential editors to see if they're a good fit?
So for one, you always want to make sure that they edit your genre. Because I do know editors that only do fiction books. So if you have a fiction editor, but your book is nonfiction, the rules are different. So in that aspect, then your voice may kind of be removed because there's different rules. So make sure that they edit your genre, make sure that they are within your budget. Always ask about if they offer, like me, I offer all styles of editing. Not every editor will do a developmental. They may only do a line copy, or a proofread. So you want to make sure that they specialize in what it is that you need. And you should know your needs. In my opinion, every author should know the style of, or educate themselves on the style of editing and what their book will need. Always ask for a sample edit. Like, that is very important because you can see how I edit. Like me, I'm funny. I'm still lit a little bit. So I do constructive criticism on the manuscripts, but at the same time, I may throw out a funny joke. I don't want to be uptight. So you want to make sure that the energies mesh well, because the editing and the writing process, they're both stressful. So you want to make sure that they mesh well with your personality and your work of art.
Let's see.
Oh, and they got to ask, who have they worked with? So get that portfolio
references
and find out who they worked with. Look at those book reviews. Make sure that they're not getting 1 and 2 stars because of the editing. I've seen it a lot of times where I've read a book that had great potential, and then I'll go back and read the reviews, and it's like, I understand why they said that. Like, this person probably did not have an editor, so their book was all over the place, but it had all the potential in the world to be amazing. So yeah.
Does it frustrate you when authors, writers, and feel like they don't need an editor and they just go and and put it out there. Does that frustrate you at all? Or are you just like, well, you'll figure it out?
I wouldn't say it's frustrating. I would say it's a little disheartening because I feel as though you budget, like you should always have a budget for your book. So it's the book cover, the typesetting, all of that. And I feel like editing should be in that budget. Because it's just important. Like you work too hard to put out something that just doesn't make sense. And has
Right.
the potential to be great. Like, so it's a little disheartening, but then sometimes they may not be able to afford an editor. So I have to look at it from respectfully from that standpoint too.
Righty. Let's see. What are the most common questions you get from authors?
They ask a lot about my turnaround time,
Mm.
like a whole lot, and also who I've worked with and how long I've been in the industry. Um, I do get a lot of questions about if I've had, like if I am an editor, if I'm self-taught, or if I actually went to school for it. That's a question that I get a lot. And of course, my rates, like how much do you cost, Chloe? Because I'm not cheap. So they always ask that question too.
Okay. If someone wanted to, I do want to get into how, like, your turnaround time and everything, but if someone wanted to get into editing, because you got into it non-traditionally, but if someone wanted to do that, and I'm sure people ask you, what do you tell them? What's the advice you give them to get started?
So with that, I am big on putting yourself out there, first of all. So you have to have sample edits, whether you made up the words and you're going through and you're doing the edits yourself, you have to have some type of proof that you're capable of doing it. And you have to you have to do things for free. You can't just out the gate with these are my rates, but you don't have the experience behind those rates. Right. You could do training. There are a lot of, which I'm not privy to the courses online, but I do know that there are courses online that you can take to get certified in editing, of learning the different styles of editing. So that's another thing. But can I cuss?
Yeah, you can.
So you have to know your shit. Like, so if you are going the non-traditional route like I did, you have to have some type of a strength behind knowing the English and the grammar world.
Right.
You have to and then you have to know how to edit nonfiction or fiction books, or you have to know if you want which genre you want to edit. Because like I said, the rules are different. They're completely different in fiction and nonfiction. So you have to be able to maneuver between those rules or just specialize in one or the other.
I think that someone who is interested in editing, let me rewind. We talked about what you feel the misconceptions are about what you do. I tend to think that people really believe that editors just sit and do grammar. You know what I mean? Just, that should be a comma, or, that should be plural. I really think that's what some people think professional editors do. And as we're talking, I'm learning more about, we're all learning more about what you do and how important it is. So as a new author, I just want to stop and say thank you for the services that you provide. It is important, I believe, in this community, every person, everything that someone offers helps the community grow and thrive and put, authors' names out there. So I feel like, with my podcast, I wanted to make sure that I didn't just have authors, that I didn't just have narrators, that I wanted the people behind the scenes, the people whose names you really don't hear, and really shine light on what you do, because to me it's just as important as what the author is doing. So I just wanted to say that before we moved on with the questions.
Yeah, it's more than just correcting grammar. And I say this a lot. I just lost my words. But I aim to strengthen the author's writing skills. And I do that by asking them challenging questions within the manuscript. Mm-hmm. So for it goes way beyond just, you're missing a comma, fix that. You know what I mean? So,
right. Yeah. That goes into my next question of if someone is interested in working with you, what would that consultation sound like? What would they expect during that consultation with you?
So in my consultations, I give them a bit about myself as just a human, not as an editor, but how I am as just a regular, everyday human being. And then I give them my background, who I've worked with, the genres, all of that. I also like to know a bit about them, not their whole life story, but how did you start your writing journey? What prompted you to write this book? Who's your target audience? Like, who are you writing for? And then I set the expectations of how we could communicate, because communication, I'm really big on that. So my authors can always send me an email. We can schedule a call. We can do a Zoom. Let's talk, because we have to have a very good working relationship throughout this entire process. And I break down the expectations of when I return the edits, make sure you go through the comments. And if you agree with something, that's fine. If you disagree, that's fine too, because at the end of the day, it's your book, it's your baby. So you don't have to agree with everything that I'm saying. Well, maybe consider changing to this or, that. Right. So I make sure that the expectations for them is clear and concise. And I let them they can expect from me as their editor. And also go over the payments and, the contracts, the NDAs and things like that.
Now, do you encounter many clients who don't want to take any of your suggestions? Well, don't want to take your suggestions, or do you find that once people get to you, they're pretty open about, applying what you suggest? Your recommendations?
A lot of my clients are open to my suggestions, and many of them change it. But if I have one that gives me that bite back at the end of the day, I have to be respectful of their craft. So there's a reason that they don't want to change that. And then we have open dialogue of why not? It'll make it sound like this, or it'll sound like that. And so, just like I said, as an author, when you do your own editing, you're attached to the book. It's the same for me too. Editors become attached to what you're writing to. So if I see a need and I make a mention about it, and then you explain to me why you want to keep it and it makes sense, that's up to you. We can keep it. So I have to be respectful in that manner and respect their vision.
Now, you mentioned earlier during your consultation, you talked about turnaround times. What typically is your turnaround time for a project? Because I can imagine that you're probably fully booked. So if I come to you with contemporary romance, let's say it's 80K, I need the whole shebang from developmental to proofread. What typically is your turnaround time, you and your team's turnaround time for that?
So that depends on a lot, because in the developmental process, there's a lot of rewriting. So if we're working on character development, plot development, it could very well take me a month, maybe 2 months to critique it and give my suggestions. And then I turn it back over to the author, and I always put the responsibility back on them, because at the end of the day, you have to make your edits too, and you have to do it in a reasonable time frame. So I always, like, if they're on a deadline, like I want this book out by December and it's May. Oh, okay, that's fine. So when I return these edits, then I'm going to give you a month to return them back to me, and then we go to the next process. So it really depends. Like now I have a young lady that I'm working with. She's doing the whole shebang, and we've been working on her developmental for about 2.5 months now, because I need the book has so much potential and I need it to be great. Like, she's a very good writer, but it's just all over the place. So we've been working for about 2.5 months.
Oh, wow. How many projects do you work at once?
So it depends on the type of editing that they're getting. A lot of my clients get the full edit, so I can take on about 4 to 5 projects a month easily. If it's like something like a line edit or a copy edit or a proofread, like those are easy to me. Like developmental, that's the hardest style of editing ever. So when it's something simple like that, I could see like 8 manuscripts in 1 month.
Wow. Okay.
Okay.
So your days, obviously you're an entrepreneur. So how many do you set your schedule for, like a regular Monday through Friday, kind of keep business hours as far as your work day? Or how do you do that?
So I do. So if I'm working, like right now, I have 2 that I'm working on at the same time. So what I like to do is I set a timer. So I may say, okay, I'll work on this manuscript for 2 hours, take a break, like a lunch break, go do what I need to do to refresh, and then I'll go into the next manuscript and I'll set a timer for another 2 hours. I am a workaholic, so I do have days where I'm working into the night. But I love what I do, so it's not like a burden on me.
Gotcha.
Definitely time myself throughout the day, because if not, then I can easily burn myself out.
Gotcha. Okay. Do you have a particular genre that you prefer editing, and when you get it, you get real excited because you want to sink your teeth into it?
I love all things romance. No matter what the subgenre is. I have a project, next month, and it's fantasy romance. I'm like, ooh, like this is gonna be so juicy. Like I cannot wait for her to submit that. Like it makes it more enjoyable when I'm reading not that editing isn't enjoyable, but when it's a good romance book, because I like reading them in general, just as an avid reader, I just read them. Man, like it gets to the point to where I have to go back because I'm reading it for leisure. I'm just like, no, you got to go back and edit this out. Like,
right. That's what I was gonna. Do you have time to read for leisure?
I do. So at first I had a hard time doing it because it was hard for me to separate the editor mind frame from just being a reader. So there were things in books that I would catch, like this doesn't make sense, or this could have been written a little bit differently. And it deterred me from just reading for leisure. But now I try to read every night, even after a day of editing. I have my Kindle, I have the lights off, the TV off, and I'm laying in the bed and I'm reading.
Okay.
Even if it's a chapter, I try to do it every night.
Well, that's good that you do something to, decompress your mind. Because I'm sure, like when you're editing, you're on 10. So
I am.
Yeah, I'm sure. Let's see. Couple more questions. So, what do you feel is the most challenging part of what you do?
Managing the different personalities when I am working with authors, because some of them are anxious about the process. Then you have some that are laid back. I had one author where our emails look like a text message, and I'm like, let's just call me. Like, let's just
Right.
now I could tell you're anxious. just call me and let's get this all squared away. So managing the different personalities can be challenging, because I struggle with anxiety as well. And I'm an introvert, but when it comes down to my business, I have to be the extrovert. So it balances out, but yeah, those personalities hit differently.
I understand. I guess my last question will be, if someone is interested in working with you, how can they find you?
So I am on Instagram at editor Khloe Cain. I am on TikTok. What is my TikTok? It's editor, I think it's editor Bay KC.
Okay.
I don't know, but I'm always on TikTok doing videos. And also my website is chloesthoughtsediting.com. They can submit a sample edit on there. They can send me an email through my website as well. If they prefer just a direct line of communication, my email is info@chloesthoughtsediting.com.
Okay, great. And I'll also go ahead and link all of that information in the description box. So if you want to reach out to Khloe, you very well can by clicking the link. And I think that's my last question I have for you. Let me just make sure.
What?
Oh, here's a question. I don't think I asked you.
Okay.
What would you say is the most rewarding part about what you do?
So for me, it's seeing the author grow through the editing process. So they have strengthened their writing skills. That's because, like I said, editing is more than just correcting errors for me as an editor. I aim to let's tighten up a few things in your writing. So when they send back those edits and those sentences are different and things are flowing better, I'm just like, look at you, like you did it. So for me, it's being a part of strengthening their writing skills.
The growth process, that's important.
Yeah, really important. And if you have the right editor, you're going to grow through that process for sure.
Got it. Okay. All right. So that was my last question. Okay. So for the last part of the podcast, if you've been watching my podcast, you know that I always play a game at the end with my guest. And lately, urban trivia has been the game. And I ask my guests to get to 3 points, sometimes 5, depending on their comfortability. The way you're making that face, I think I should just go for 3 points. You can let me know if you want to go for 5, but their questions, urban trivia is music, movies, just Black culture, and they're multiple choice. Okay, so, and it's a lot of cards, and I need to start shuffling these better because sometimes people get the same questions. So I need to start making sure I put all the ones to the back. Okay. First question. What is Kobe Bryant's middle name? Is it A, Royce, B, Jeffrey, C, Rashad, or D, Bean?
Is it Rashad?
It's not. It's actually Bean.
Oh, that was my. Isn't one of his, like, that's the nickname for one of his daughters or something like that?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, I knew that part.
Okay. So you see what type of questions it is. They're pretty light. Okay, next question. What's another sports question? Are you a sports person by chance?
No, I'm not really at all.
Okay, I'll just ask you this one. We'll see how it goes. Which draft class did LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Carmelo Anthony enter the NBA? Was it 2000, 2001, 2002, or 2003?
2000?
No, it's 2003. No, okay, this one, okay. We're gonna get you.
I need a point. I need something going.
You're gonna get this point. Are you gonna get this point? Before they were Destiny's Child, they were known as, was it A, Girl Power, B, Girls Time, C, Girl Magic, or D, Choice?
DC3. So I don't know that one. I don't know that one.
This is Girls Time. Girls Time. Okay, we gotta get you one. Okay, because that's 3. Okay, hold on.
Who knew? You cannot tell me that you were not about to say DC3. Come on.
No. Okay, here we go. All right, finish the lyric. If you don't jump to put jeans on, is it A, baby, you ain't in the game, B, Texas up in this thing, C, gang, 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 or D, baby, you don't feel my pain? If you don't jump to put jeans on.
Baby, you don't feel my pain.
Yes.
I just listened to this the other day.
Okay, we got 1 point. Come on, 2 more. We got it. All right. Name the movie. I gotta fight every night to prove my love. Is it A, Cooley High, B, The 5 Heartbeats, C, Think Like a Man, or D, Why Did I Get Married?
The 5 Heartbeats.
Correct. All right, 1 more point. According to his lyrics in What They Really Want, where did DMX meet Cookie? Was it A, the movies, B, the club, C, the ice cream parlor, or D, the bus stop?
Ice cream parlor.
All right, that's 3 points. You want to try one more?
Let's go.
All right.
Let's go.
All right, I got 1 more bonus question for you. The question is, Dominique Jones is the real name of which chart-topping artist? Is it A, Gunna, B, Lil Baby, C, Da Baby, or D, Roddy Ricch?
So I don't know this, so I'm just gonna go with C to be safe.
Nah, C is Da Baby. It's actually Lil Baby.
Oh. So it's one babies.
For the babies. This is gonna sound funny, but one time when Da Baby first came out, and I didn't know who he was, I didn't know his music, and I'm just online, I'm looking, and I was like, "Who's Dababy?" I was like, "Dababy."
I'm a 90s girly. Like I'm still in the 90s and the early 2000s.
Me too. But yeah. All right. So that is the end of the podcast. I want to thank you again for joining me. Do you have any final words you would like to say before we close out?
If you need an editor, come.
She's your girl. She's your girl.
I'm your girl.
Girl. All right. So thank you again for joining, and thank you all for watching. And I hope you all have a good day.
Have a wonderful weekend.
All right. Thank you.
Welcome.
All right. We are.